I lost my limb in a motorcycle accident in 1990 in August, and was hospitalized for about 11 months at the hospital at the University of Pennsylvania. Yeah, there's a real unknown factor when you find yourself in the hospital and you realize that you've lost a limb, and especially being a new amputee and not knowing anyone who had been through it before, or having that personal experience of knowing that people were okay, and you know, you start thinking about you know, what are you going to be able to do for work? Am I going to be able to walk naturally? You know, I've had instances where the leg used to get caught underneath the front seat if I was in the back seat of a vehicle, or tripping people on the bus, and now I can actually get my foot completely underneath me and sit comfortably. And this doesn't feel tight or bound. It just feels very natural sitting like that.
So the type of prosthesis that John is wearing is something relatively new. This is called an EMS socket, environmentally managed system, basically managing the volume of the residual limb. This moves, the inner socket moves and links up to the individual's limb, where there is very little movement at all. So he goes ahead and he applies this prosthetic sheath. Again, it's the wick for vacuum. And then he applies the EMS socket, which is custom made to his limb, to fit just his limb. It's urethane. There is the sealing sleeve. He'll go ahead and apply the second prosthetic sheath over the EMS socket. He inverts the sealing sleeve, puts the prosthesis on.
And that little notch catches in the...
Yeah, there's a key in the back, so both align themselves properly. He seals the socket, and again, you're gonna see this appear where then it's gonna fold and it'll show you the brim of the socket. So he's now pumping the air out of this socket, and right now you can see this ring depressing, going up and down. So what it's doing is driving the air out of this socket, and he can obtain about 17 inches of mercury. This is 17 inches of vacuum that he will be able to obtain inside the socket. Now you're going to start seeing the demarcation of the socket retainer, because he's pulling all that air out, and it's a negative atmospheric pressure. So now that stays on. Are you comfortable with that? Good. He has what we call a Triton Harmony foot, and this allows him a dynamic response foot. It's made out of carbon, allows him to walk on uneven terrain, as well as every time he takes a step, he's depressing this black ring here, which is giving him and drawing more air out of the socket. And he is good to go. He can have a seat. We'll just demonstrate that this prosthesis stays on the patient's limb. Here, lift up. And I can actually just pull him off this chair, and you don't see any separation of the inner socket from the retainer.